Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Showcast, a series of candid conversations with creatives and professionals from the international film and audiovisual industry. And this new episode was recorded live from the 2024 edition of Meeting Point Vilnius, the audiovisual industry event taking place within the context of the Vilnius Film Festival in Lithuania. And today our guest is Joachim Friedmann, a highly regarded educator and writer boasting extensive experience across various media, ranging from comic books to films, series, and beyond. At Meeting Point Vilnius, Joachim conducted a workshop for Lithuanian screenwriters focusing on the intricacies of serial storytelling. During our conversation, we'll explore Joachim's wealth of experience in this particular sector of the industry and delve into his versatile writing career, spanning different media. We'll uncover insights from his personal journey and artistic evolution, while also contemplating the role of writing in the contemporary landscape, including the potential impact of AI technologies. With so much to talk about, the best thing to do is to simply get to it. Fire up on Audio Teeny and listen to the audio waves as they fly through the air. This is the Showcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. We actually met on the way here. Isn't that interesting? And yeah, now I'm leaving today and I get to talk with you again. So what has been your experience so far at Meeting Point Vilnius like?
Oh, I had a great time, and I know this is the thing to say. Yeah, so I couldn't say no. It was so and so. No, but I really had a great time. So it's not a lie. For me, it's always so interesting and challenging at one point, but in a very positive way to teach outside, and not just teaching outside, but working outside with creatives outside Germany, to be precise. To work with creatives. In this case, Lithuanian creatives. Yeah? Because I think if you work together, if you're creating together, this is such an intimate and deep process. And you get to know the culture, the people, the country much better in this way than just as a mere tourist. And it's kind of it's a very special experience, and it's hard to describe this. Yeah, I think wer es nicht erfüllt, wird es nie erhaschen, as Goethe said. Something like if you can't feel it, you will not understand it. So this point of creating together, this is a very special thing and very dear to me. Even if I'm doing this also at my university in Cologne, well, not my university, the university that employs me actually, the film school, the International Film School in Cologne. We also have an international group from people all over the world, 7 countries right now in my cohort. But just to work exclusively with Lithuanians, that was a very, very unique experience, which I really enjoyed.
You're referring to the workshop that you're doing here, and I would like to know more about it. So what exactly is this workshop all about?
Well, it was a workshop for young aspiring writers from Lithuania, and my focus of work is serial storytelling. This is also the program I'm responsible for in Cologne. And I guess the thing is that serial dramaturgy, it's really different in many points to dramaturgy in feature films, or let's say in closed formats in general. Yeah? So the question is more, how is the story going on? Not so much how is the story ending. Yeah. And this has some consequences for storytelling and for dramaturgy, for the structure, for the conflicts we are raising. And there are not so many people teaching this, because serial storytelling for a long time was supposed to be, the ugly little sister of a feature film. This changed, obviously, in the last years, but it's still, I think, a long way to go, that this really is also in education and in art schools considered as a discipline on its own, let's say it in this way. Yeah? And I think it was for many participants a real eye-opener. One of the participants in the beginning said, basically, series are feature films, but a bit longer, aren't they? Yeah, and I said, no. Yeah. And after the workshop, and I was very happy about this, yeah, mission accomplished. He said, now I know the differences. Yes, thank you.
It's a different art form.
It is.
It's like when they were saying, I used to get so annoyed when they used to say, VR is the future of cinema. It's a different art form.
No, different art form. Absolutely.
Do you also work with VR? Because you work in a lot of media.
Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. And actually, let's say this whole idea of serious storytelling is different, and we have to create also the theoretical foundation to teach this. Yeah, it somehow came to me when I started writing for interactive media back in 2000. Well, I started in the 2000s with smaller game-oriented stuff. Mostly, I have to say, for promotion and advertisement. And then in 2011, I created a game for Microsoft, which was educational. It was a game which was targeted to preschool and elementary school to teach the children how to write and to read. It was serialized somehow with different parts, narrative parts, and I created a story world for this. And doing this, in the beginning, I thought, I'm so experienced in storytelling, with comics and feature and series. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. Yeah. You're laughing. You already know what I want to say.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's always something that can go wrong, first of all. So
yeah. And on the other hand, there are many similarities. Yeah, storytelling is a very transcultural and transhistorical phenomenon, which in every media, stories are sharing elements and design principles. But if you're going into the interactive realm, there are really fundamental differences which also have to be addressed. Yeah, and I wrote an article about this for Zeitmagazin, which is a newspaper in Germany. Actually, I wrote for a game magazine, WASD. This was picked up by Zeitmagazin. That's the correct story, let's say. And so I thought, well, maybe there's something in it, because Zeitmagazin is supposed to be very bourgeois, very, let's say, for the well-educated people. And I thought, seems to be interesting for them. So maybe I should dig deeper. And that led me to my dissertation and my PhD on transmedia storytelling. And this somehow was, for myself, an eye-opener, this research, to see in which points stories share the similarities in every media and in which points are they differing. Yeah, and I think VR is a wonderful example that you have to follow completely different rules. Yeah, even, of course, there might be a hero and there might be obstacles and conflicts, of course. Yeah, but how are you going to present and introduce them? Yeah, and how are they experienced by the player, or the recipient, however you want to call it? That's something completely different, and this is so interesting. Yeah,
we now live in a world of transmedia, right?
You could say that, yeah.
Well, how would you define transmedia?
That's
because some people,
Don't get me started.
So this is what I'm becoming increasingly aware doing these podcasts. It's like, terminology can be confusing sometimes.
Very confusing. So, I totally agree. Yeah.
As an expert, how would you describe?
Well, it really, as Wittgenstein says, a word is defined by the use of the word. Yeah, and Jenkins defined it in 2006. I think he was the first one to use it and define it. Was a story which stretches over different media, the same story. Yeah, now it's more used as a principle that a certain story world could appear in different media. Yeah, so we could ask ourselves, the Marvel universe, is this transmedia? Not really. Yeah, because we have the comic universe and we have the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are two different branches somehow. Yeah, this fundamental idea of Jenkins, there's this one story stretching over a lot of different media, like Blair Witch Project. Yeah, that's sometimes I'm using words here. This was really transmedial, right? It started in the internet, and then there was this film, which was supposed to be documentary, which was not. It was a fictional film. So this was a transmedia project because you needed both media platforms, internet and film, right? Maybe you could watch the film.
Well, I was going to say that the internet has not at least lasted up to now, as people watch the film, but maybe they're not aware that there was an internet side to it.
True, that's true. So maybe this is a wrong example, yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. It was like one of the first examples where internet and film, for example, kind of worked together, interacted with each other, rather than one being a version of another, right?
Exactly. But you see, let's say the the challenge to find a good example shows that these kind of stories are very, very difficult to create, because normally you want to watch a streaming show, or you want to play a game, but you don't want to play a game to follow the streaming platform. This seems too inconvenient. Even if let's say the general idea is somehow very appealing, but in practice, it was never really realized. So, and here we see how the term transmedia shifted, right? It shifted from, okay, there's one story over many platforms to there's a story world and you can watch a film or you can play a game or VR or whatever, but you can all watch this independently. And this, in my opinion, is the new meaning of transmedia. Yeah? And I mean, they're always changing it. Yeah, it was multimedia in the 2000s, and then it was somewhere transmedia. Some say cross media. Yeah, some say 360 degrees now.
360 degrees.
So it's like, okay, what's the new buzzword, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for doing that, because sometimes it does get confusing, and it's good to kind of, let people know and not leave them out of the discourse, because, again, terminology can be quite tricky. But the fundamental thing that ties them together, especially as far as you're concerned, is writing. And so this is the first time we speak, and I would like to just ask you, where did this interest come from for you? Did you have that disposition from a very early age that you would just be writing, you'd have this fantasy and you wanted to manifest it somehow?
Yeah, I think so. I remember me reading Donald Duck stories when I was 5 years old or something like that. Actually, I learned reading before I went to school because I loved the Asterix comics so much. Yeah, and the first word I could identify was Ende. Yeah, the end. Yeah, because I knew this is always when they're eating at the campfire. Yeah, when they're eating the boss. Then this is end. So I could identify it because I wanted to read it and not just somehow be dependent to my mother to read it for me. Yeah? And so.
Wow, so you remember the first words, like learning to read?
Yes, absolutely.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, because this, maybe it's a good point. Yeah, it's interesting that you're pointing this out, because in fact, it had such an impact on me that I'm still remembering it. Yeah, and then and it was a serial story world. Yeah, the Asterix and Donald Duck. Yeah, Duckburg and so on. And I was so fascinated by this. I could just dive into these worlds and stay there and stay there and stay there, because there were so many stories. And this really had such an impact on me that from a very early age on, I had this idea, I want to write as well. And in fact, when 20 years later, I became a writer for Disney's Donald Duck. Yeah, so this was like fulfilling a childhood dream. Yeah,
we have something in common. Donald Duck is my favorite Disney character.
Cool. Okay.
Among my favorites of the entire narrative world ever. Mm-hmm. Definitely the first cartoon character that I remember loving, and it's just so funny,
Mm-hmm.
And I like that voice too.
Should we imitate it on the podcast?
We're not there yet, but eventually we'll be so free that we can do that.
Okay.
Liberating. Yeah. And what about Warner Brothers? Did you like that as well?
Yes, very much. Funny enough, they were kind of, my parents were really restrictive about this, because they said there's too much violence,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
They're very surreal compared to like the Walt Disney.
Absolutely.
But so funny.
So funny.
You can watch the timeless. Well, actually, some of them have not aged as well due to like some racial controversial elements. But, we're increasingly becoming aware, or you would hope so, of certain things. So that helps us kind of watch those movies. Because I call them movies, they're shorts. But what's the earliest memory of cinema? You talked about, remembering learning to read, but this is a film podcast. And what is your earliest memory of the movies?
Well, the movies, good question. I think the first one, which really had a big impact on me and where I really vividly remember that I was in the cinema completely fascinated, was in fact Star Wars. Yeah. The first part, which is now the fourth part. But back then it was the first part. Back then it was
Don't you miss when it was the first part?
Absolutely. And actually it was not even a part. Yeah. It was just a feature. Yeah. And I was so fascinated by it. Yeah. And when I get out of the cinema, I was still, in this somehow captured in this magic. And I begged my mother, please let me go another time. And we went a second time, and my mother was really bored. And again, she was very liberal left-wing and thought this was much too violent.
Really?
So, and then I was able to get her into Star Wars a third time. Yeah. But it was very clear this was the last time ever. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty young. I must have been 11 or something like that. Yeah. And what I did was I took my tape recorder with me in a bag, and I taped the film. Well, the sound, right?
Yeah.
So at least I could have the sound back home, yeah, because I knew they wouldn't let me go again, yeah. But so I had this sound, and I listened to it many times.
Wow, that's great. That's unbelievable. I love that story about taking your tape recorder into the movies too.
It was very how you say
incredible.
It's a black recording, or how you say it? No, bootleg. That's what I want to say. Yeah, I was a bootlegger from a very early age on.
I guess so, in a way, yeah. But in a very innocent way, and I love that. When did you start writing for TV and film?
That was a bit later. Actually, I started as a comic writer. I started to create my own comic series when I was 11. It was a superhero story. Again, very innocent and not very elaborate. Yeah, I just copied the Marvel franchise. With a bit more humor and irony, because actually, even with 11 years, I realized this is a bit cheesy what they are doing.
Take themselves a bit too seriously,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
One of my favorite superheroes was Darkwing Duck, which is Donald Duck's
yes, he's fantastic. But then I created my own comic series when I was 21, which was the first one that was published, right? And then I worked for Disney, and then I did a comic version of Die Lindenstraße, which was back in the 80s and 90s, was the most successful German series, very, very important. And they had a kind of, it was a satire, actually. Yeah. So I wrote this, and it was a bit extreme. Yeah, it was a lot of sex, drugs, and violence involved.
When was this? What time frame?
We are talking about 1995. Yeah, 1995, right. And the producers were not happy. Yeah, and I was fired in the end. Yeah, and then
why were you fired?
Yeah, because I was somehow resistant. They said, "Yeah, please change the script," and I said, "No, it's a satire." And actually, my publisher he had my back. Yeah, so. Yeah, they were just really pissed. Yeah, and
they were looking for a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, I was the scapegoat. Yeah, and then I wrote maybe the most important letter of my life. I was not aware that I would do that, but or that it was so important. Yeah, but really from my heart, I wrote, guys, I love your show. I never wanted to be to somehow throw dirt in your face or whatever, but this was a satire. And if I can't be extreme in a satire, I don't know where I should be extreme, yeah? But I apologize if I hurt any one of you, yeah? But I really love your show, and so no hard feelings from my side, and sorry that this didn't work out, yeah? And then they wrote me back and said, thank you, yeah? If you really like our show, maybe you would like to write comics for us, yeah? And I did this. These were just strips, like, gag-oriented 3 or 4 pictures. And it was not that extreme. It was still funny, yeah. But, yeah, it was also okay. It was just another format. If you tell me, okay, do it, let's say, a bit more supportive, or however you want to call this, why not? And this went pretty well for 1 or 2 years, and then they asked me to join the scriptwriters team. Yeah. And I was really honored because, I never wrote a TV script or film script before in my entire life. And I had no formal training, actually, because back in the 90s, the film schools, if they had script writing courses in Germany, it was just for feature film, and it was mainly art house. Yeah. And wow. Lindenstraße was Yeah, it was not a soap opera in that sense, but it used many elements of soap opera. A fixed ensemble. It was in one street in Germany, somehow serving as the microcosm of Germany, with all, working class and educated people and migrants and teenagers and elderly people and so on. Yeah, and we told very everyday stories. Yeah. Well, actually, it was based on Coronation Street, the English show, if you know this.
Yeah. Absolutely. I live in Ireland.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But it was a weekly, not a daily, and Anyway, this was not the kind of stuff you would teach at film school back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had no formal training, but I was asked to join the team anyway. And it was a bit rough, I have to admit, even the idea that you have to rewrite something all the time. I didn't know that from the comic scene.
Like drafts, different drafts.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like, what? But I delivered my draft. That's it. I'm an artist.
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
Yeah, I know. I still can't get over it in a way.
Yeah, I understand you, This is, the second draft most of the time is better than the first draft. Sometimes the third draft is also better, but it's very rarely the 10th draft is better than,
Yeah.
Really,
By the 10th draft, something's wrong. Something's fundamentally wrong, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, feature film might be a bit different. Yeah. We just heard this anecdote from Scorsese where he said, after our script was done, we realized we need a much bigger role for the indigenous character. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. That you somehow try to get the story first by writing it. Yeah. But in serial storytelling, at least when the series is running for a while, then you know what to do, basically. Yeah. And then I think 3 drafts. Well, most of the times I wrote 3 drafts at Lindenstraße, or whichever show. Yeah. Anyway, that was new to me. And, of course, what was very tempting was the money you would earn there. It was much more than in comic writing. Comics, anyway, in Germany are not considered as a serious thing. It's child stuff or whatever. It's a bit different to France, definitely, and also different to the English-speaking countries, I guess. And this is also changing a bit. It's also considered an art form now, but you have to call it graphic novel. Yeah, otherwise it's still children's stuff. Yeah, which is so ridiculous because if you ask me, it's the same medium, right?
Again, terminology. Sometimes it is silly, right? But I want to go back to something that you said. This show that you worked on, you talked about it being extreme, right? Obviously, with the change in times, certain things in terms of taste, but also what is culturally acceptable or what can be represented on the screen has changed. How do you feel that has impacted the role of a writer in a way, becoming more, just the culture at large, becoming more aware of all of this and more sensible in some ways too?
Yes, definitely. It changed a lot, yeah. And in many points, it changed for the better. It's good somehow, to and this is also the strength of serious storytelling, that you can represent much more perspectives than you could before, and than you can in a feature film. Or if you represent many perspectives in a feature film, like in Scorsese's last masterpiece, it has to be 3 hours, right? Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah.
I love that film.
Yeah, it's a great film.
And I did not mind sitting down for 3 hours.
Of course.
I also thought it was a masterpiece.
Yeah. But you see, you need more time, and you have more time in series, and that's a very good thing, And the representation in Germany is really changing a lot. Germany was much more, let's say. It wasn't that diverse in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah? I think this was different than in England or in France, which had their colonies and therefore much more people from POC people or whoever. And but this is changing in Germany as well, and they are not really represented on screen, or if they are represented many times as the drug dealers or whatever, And to have an awareness for this, that's very, very important, When it comes to comedy, I have to say I'm sometimes concerned, because of course it's not the smartest way or the best way to make jokes about minorities, but still, we have this discussion about Little Britain, for example, and you could say that the only gay in the Welsh village was offensive, but then on the other hand, the guy who was writing and impersonating him, he's gay himself, So
I'm not familiar with that show. I was obviously aware when it was popular, but I don't. I think it's also a very, very clever comment on how even back then people weren't that open about their sexuality necessarily, especially in a little village. So that's the whole point of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But comedy has always been vulnerable to more that type of criticism, hasn't it? More than maybe like other.
Absolutely, and this is my concern, because back in the day, it was always the conservative side criticizing the comedy, and you could always see, okay, when the conservative side is criticizing something, this is good, and let's say old rules were challenged by comedy, and now the criticism is mainly coming from the liberal side, and this concerns me somehow, because I really believe in an open discourse, and sometimes it seems, I don't know. The thing is, I'm totally in line with their goals. I mean, what we said, representation of minorities, being on eye level, showing racism, showing sexism, showing, I don't know, homophobia and misogynistic behavior. That's very, very important. But that's another thing. Sometimes you have to show what happens when you want to show homophobia. And that means this is somehow offensive towards the gay community. So should you show it? Should you not show it? It's a really difficult. Should you say, okay, trigger warning here? I don't know.
Well, that would be a buzzkill though, right? For every joke, there needs to be like a trigger warning. That's crazy. On the other hand, you're right. But I think it also, at some point, artists in general, writers, directors, painters, poets, whatever, at some point they need to take a chance, right? They need to be the ones to take a chance, right? And if it's not read well by the public, that's the chance. That's unfortunately the negative side of it.
Yeah, that's exactly
the bad part is when people stop taking chances, I feel like.
I totally agree, And that's exactly the point. There must also be, let's say, the space for inappropriate behavior. And still, if Ricky Gervais is cracking jokes about the trans community, this is just so poor.
I was the biggest Ricky Gervais fan, but his last few specials, he repeats the same set, and he's just not funny anymore. He's got that same type of delivery. I think at some point also artists, yes, they do have to take chances, but when they're not good anymore, they should just stop. He's got enough money. He don't need to make more specials. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And
he's wrecking his legacy.
It's true. Yeah, because I feel the same. I was such a big fan, but this is so poor. And why would you do that to such a vulnerable community? Yeah, but then on the other, as I said, I'm really supporting with my whole heart open discourse. But for open discourse, this also calls for borders and to say, okay, this was not fair, this was not right, whatever. So I'm also inviting the criticism. That's not my point. And, maybe as a straight white male, I'm not the right one to address this. That would be a typical situation where I would say, okay, let's open the microphone for the discriminated or the minorities which need to speak up here. I think that's very important.
But, again, it's good to have dialogues. And, if you only have certain types of art forms that only say things from a certain perspective, then there is no dialogue. And that's very, very dull, boring, and just doesn't really amount to anything much, I sometimes wonder what this generation will leave behind, generation in the sense of these times that we're living in. Because once the big artists that we know and love, like you mentioned, Martin Scorsese, but he's quite, he's getting on, his next movie could be his last. I hope he lives another 100 years, and when he goes, he will leave an incredible void. In the world of cinema too, we could talk about many other greats, but they're also getting on. So we also need to wonder what kind of art we're making. And that brings me to my next point, another very hot topic in the world of the arts. And I feel like the world of writing very much could be impacted by it. Maybe you know what I'm going to introduce to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. AI, ChatGPT. How do you think, very broad question, but how do you think this beast AI is going to impact writing?
Oh, wow. What a question. The thing is, I did this question in interviews, I think 10 times now in the last year. And every time there was a new situation, I mean, this is evolving so fast that I really can't tell you anything in the end. We have workshop here about AI, your staff writer, this afternoon at the Meeting Point. And my colleagues, Taj and Marcus, they are really skilled using the AI, and for them it's good support, supporting their creative visions and their work. I'm sometimes using it also as a kind of, let's say, a brainstorming partner or something like this, but it's for my own, let's say, mental safety. I'm writing the stuff, not ChatGPT, right? But who knows what happens in the next years? I mean, so far, I would say ChatGPT mainly is repeating cliches. Yeah, so I did some trials with serious concepts with female leads, right? And I always ask ChatGPT, okay, this is the challenge, this is the protagonist, what would happen? Yeah, and I mean, 80 or 90% of the cases, or of the text, however you want to call it, ChatGPT sent in a male savior. When the female protagonist gets in a crisis, there's a male savior who helps her.
Yeah, there's no greater convention than that, right?
Really, yeah. So ChatGPT is just repeating the damsel in distress trope, because it was used so many times, and ChatGPT is just using all the narrative text worldwide, and so it's doing this, So there's a lot of bias implemented in this, however you want to call it, intelligence, I don't know, or in this kind of algorithms, and so far this is not fixed, and we have to work against this. But then again, I mean, ask me again in 1 or 2 years. I don't know what will happen. I really don't know.
It's very difficult to tell, because also you don't know how this ChatGPT, for example, will be perfected in the future.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Then again, I remember having very similar conversations about VR replacing cinema not too long ago. And now it feels like now people have finally realized that it is a different art form and it's not going to replace anything. So in a way, I do feel like whenever something comes along, it does disrupt the environment, but it doesn't overtake it completely, because people are still painting, people are still sculptors. There's still sculptors around and nobody, I don't know. It opens up possibilities. We could talk about this forever, but I was speaking with an intimacy coordinator yesterday. That is a very new role. Like, this did not exist up to a couple of years ago. And it's just people who sought opportunities within an existing work environment. And this is now going to become a very prominent role within the film industry. So it does disrupt things, but it also opens up new opportunities, I think. The fundamental act of writing is going to remain. So, working with these, I guess, young writers here in Lithuania, how do you feel they approach writing? Do they have any particular way that seems to define maybe the times in which they were, what's the word I'm looking for, of their formation in a way?
Maybe one last thing regarding AI. Probably you saw this new text-to-visual thing, Soma. Was it called Soma? Well, you're prompting a text and it's producing an audiovisual, a short clip, a movie.
Wow.
So I told my students, the writer is still needed. So let's say the dramaturgy is still needed, and maybe not the director or the DOP, but we are still needed. So that's my hope, but maybe it's a false hope.
What about those covers by here is Michael Jackson singing, "Hit Me Baby One More Time," Like,
Yeah, true.
I don't want to hear that.
No, me neither.
Also, and you hear it, and it's not good. It's very standard vision of music. It sucks. Are people getting used to that? That's another worry. Can people get used to that kind of like substandard quality of art, vision, creativity?
The problem is instinctively I would say yes. Yeah. And I would say, wow, music is so much worse than it was 30 or 40 years ago. But I'm very aware that this is a very, very old man statement,
There's always been bad music.
Exactly. And my grandmother basically said the same about my music. Yeah. And she said, but why would you not listen to my music, which is so much better? And I said, no. So I don't know. This is also a matter of taste. But what I totally see, I don't know if this is going on because I just read this morning that Sheryl Crow, she said, no, this is not happening to my music. Yeah, she's preparing her legacy somehow. Yeah, she's saying, no AI versions of my music, no back catalog demos which are published when I'm dead. I didn't publish them for very good reasons. Yeah, and I want to keep it this way. Yeah.
Oh my God, I've always had a problem with bonus tracks and releases. I'm a huge music fan. I like Sheryl Crow. I like that song "Run Baby Run." It's like one of those chord changes are incredible. I don't even know. It's great stuff. I'm very mindful of your time, Joachim. We've been speaking for quite a while. Yeah, but yeah, you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I should maybe somehow answer your last question. Actually, but okay, it's a good sign if our conversation goes
breaking the barriers. This is something that AI cannot do yet.
That's a good thing. Yeah, true. Yeah, well, working with Lithuanian creatives, it made me aware of my own limitations or of my own bubble, of my own biases, also of my own strengths, of course. Yeah, but these people coming from Lithuania, which was this huge kingdom back in the Middle Ages, yeah, which is now a small country, which was colonized and occupied by the Russians, yeah, which somehow. Well, now for me, it's a typical Western city, yeah, but 20 years ago, it was completely different, yeah. And when we're speaking about disruptions, these guys really experience disruptions, right? And of course, this somehow creates completely different stories, yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm just giving them the tools, yeah. And then I see what they are doing with these tools, and this is so amazing, yeah. And that's what I spoke about in the very beginning, yeah. It's so amazing to see what they are doing and to share these feelings, these emotions, because that's the strength of storytelling. We can share not just informations, we can share emotions, right? And to share this with these young people, this is such an amazing experience. And I'm very grateful for that.
Brilliant. So the experience at Meeting Point Vilnius has been great. Couple of silly questions now, but I think silly questions are important, especially for people who write, who would like to know these things, maybe about what other writers do and blah, blah, blah. Okay. First question. What time of the day is your favorite time of the day for writing?
Well, writing between 10 and 1. Yeah, in the morning. Yeah. Well, not in the early morning. No, I'm not. No. I have to have my proper night sleep. A lot of writers are writing through the night with coffee, cigarettes, and whiskey. But I'm not that type. I'm the type of guy who gets up in the morning at 7 or 8 o'clock, drinks his green tea. Yeah. Well, I was born in Japan. What can I tell you?
And vapes.
Not even that. Yeah. Well, all the sins are kicking in the afternoon. Yeah, when I'm drinking my first glass of wine or whatever. But it's very difficult for me to write under influence, let's say, of whatever. Yeah. Well, if it's not green tea. Yeah. So between 10 and 1 o'clock, I'm the most productive. Yeah.
Gotcha. So another question that I would like to ask you regarding your writing habits, do you still, percentage-wise maybe, writing with pen and paper, do you still do that? Or do you do almost all of your writing on the digital platforms?
I'm doing everything on the digital and the keyboard, which is odd because I refused to do this, or I was really avoiding the computer for many years. But when I learned to write properly with the keyboard, I had to take a course actually, it totally switched for a very simple reason. what I want, let's say the mechanical process of writing, I don't like it. I would like to have my thoughts directly on paper. That would be the ideal form, right? But this is not possible so far. Yeah, let's wait and see. AI and so on. And I was faster with pen and paper back in the day, but I'm not anymore. I'm very fast now with the keyboard. Yeah. And basically it's just to flow onto the screen. Yeah. From my thoughts onto the screen. It's just, very convenient and quick. That's why I'm using the keyboard.
While you were saying that, it occurred to me, man, something that must have been revolutionary and people don't bring up as much when they talk about writing, the backspace or the delete button on the computer. Because then you can just edit real time. Before, even on typewriters, you couldn't do that. I mean, at best, you could maybe cancel the letter, but that takes time, It's almost like the backpack. We were talking about soccer or football, I'd say, before then. But there was a time when passing the ball back to the keeper could pick it up with his hands. Now, and ever since they can't do that, that completely changed the game of football.
True, yeah. And it's very true what you say. I think, and you can even, there's some research on this actually. I think before the computer was before it was introduced to script writing, the drafts were done much more carefully. Yeah, because you didn't want to change anything because it was so much work, right? Now it's just rewrite it, delete, bam, No, that was not possible back then. So every draft was done very, very carefully. And sometimes I see myself it's the first draft anyway. Come on, let's just do this, write it. You don't have the brilliant idea yet, but it will come for the next draft. Yeah, which is of course a bit sloppy, but what can you do?
Yeah, it's true. I do. I mean, everybody does it. Okay, so we're definitely running out of time. I mean, but this is what I like to end my conversations with. I'm a cinephile. This, after all, is a podcast that revolves around film, and I love to share people's love of movies, but also their taste in movies, because I feel like that they can be very diverse. And, sometimes the films that are talked about are always the same, but it doesn't necessarily reflect who we are and who we are at this moment in time. So I don't really ask people what their favorite movie is, because it's a boring question. And it's just, it's very difficult to answer, almost impossible to answer. But in this moment in time, what is the film that you either maybe find yourself thinking about the most, remembering the most? If you were to be told for some reason you're off to a deserted island, you can take one movie with you, what would you bring? Or simply at this moment in time, is there a film that you would recommend more than others, and why?
So spontaneous answer would be Groundhog Day.
Okay, Groundhog Day.
Because I think this is, it's an actor's film as well, with Bill Murray, but it's also very much a writer's film, like this and it's serial in a feature, because he's always revisiting the same day, but it's somehow serialized, There are always versions of this day, and I think it has a very, very deep spiritual message as well, which I really like,
Very simple idea.
Yeah, very simple, but so deep, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anyone somehow if this film resonates with anyone. But I really like the writing very much, and one scene makes two, or one scene makes many scenes in this case. That's so incredible. I heard this one scene makes two for the first time with Back to the Future, which is also a favorite film, the first part, also coming from writing. That's just incredible. So I don't know, maybe these are two trivial examples when we're thinking about a podcast and art house and film as an art form, But somehow, I'm somehow a simple guy when it comes to film, and that saved my ass somehow because I can really relate to mainstream taste and mainstream audience and to the masses. I'm moved by the same things, maybe.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. This is a completely personal question. That's why I like to ask it. Because if we find out more about people. And by the way, Groundhog Day, you could do a lot worse than that. That's a great film. I feel like revisiting it. It really is. But Joachim, it's been so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for your generous answers. It's been great.
Thank you very much. It was really fun and a pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our latest episode of the Showcast and the final episode of our podcast coverage of conversations recorded live at Meeting Point Vilnius in Lithuania. We'll have more podcasts coming your way in the near future, so make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast streaming platforms and keep an eye on our website, filmverdictnetwork.com. Till the next time, this is Matt Micucci signing off. See you soon.